The play on the field, the court, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and vendors who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go Behind the Game with Patrick Klinger and Dave Boden.
Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by Blaze Credit Union. I'm Patrick Klinger, president of Agile Marketing Partners. Alongside me, my jovial co-host, Dave Boden. Dave, great to see you. We've got temporary studios today, Dave. Got booted out of our studios.
We did get kicked out. Hopefully they'll let us back in next time. But this is great. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having me. And we're really excited to have a special guest today with us, Erich Martens, Executive Director of Minnesota State High School League. So we'll talk high school sports and some of the things associated with that activity that so many people in Minnesota and around the country are consumed with on a regular basis. And so I'll get us started. Most everybody out there is aware of the Minnesota State High School League, or you hear about it, but don't really know exactly what the organization does. Can you give us kind of a synopsis or overview of what it's all about and what you do?
Absolutely. Minnesota State High School League is about 108 years old right now, and so it's a group of member schools that came together a long time ago to say we want a set of rules and expectations that are going to be held for all who participate. And so that was the genesis of what the Minnesota State High School League is a group of schools that says we're going to compete with and against one another, and we want it to be consistent and we want it to be fair. So we talk regularly about the fact that we're never going to be able to stray from our governance roots. We create rules. We work with our schools to make sure those rules are followed. And in addition to that, we do an awful lot more. We do a lot with training for our coaches, for our ADs. We certify and register all of our officials and make sure that they meet all of the requirements, both from the Minnesota State High School League aspect as well as the state legislature. Safety is really important, and so coaches and officials need to be up on all of those kinds of things. And we assist in helping our ADs to do the work that they do within the schools, both for athletics as well as for fine arts, so that our students have as good of experiences as we can in a high school setting. And we know that, in the end, what's most visible is our state tournaments or section tournaments, when all the memories are made that are going to be replayed future years, right? And all the what ifs and the shoulda, woulda, couldas that take place within all of the high school activities. And so we have a staff, and then we also have region secretaries in 16 regions across the state for both big schools and small schools that are part of administering all of our activities as we go through regular seasons and on into the playoffs for all of the activities that happen.
So plenty going on.
Absolutely.
At all times.
Absolutely. It's a busy place for sure.
We were talking off camera about this being a particularly busy time of the year. You've got state tournaments going on. You've got high school football taking place this evening. You must be a man about town to try to get in all of these activities.
People always say, what's the downtime for the Minnesota State High School League? And there's about a week in July that it's a little bit slower. We're usually starting something or ending something or doing both at the same time. And right now we're doing that. Winter seasons are already getting started in our schools. And so there's a lot of preparation that goes there. But what gets all the press right now are the state tournaments that take place and the section tournaments. So last night, tonight, and tomorrow, quarterfinal football is taking place. Meanwhile, over at the Xcel Energy Center, we've got state volleyball. We've got swim and dive that's coming next week, along with adapted soccer. And last week we had cross country happening, some boys and girls soccer at US Bank, and just lots of different events. And so great news, we've got outstanding staff, but we also have a lot of volunteers and support from school representatives that do a lot of work for us to make those kinds of events happen and happen well. And we just appreciate all the great work that happens at the venues as well. Lots of our schools last night, if you think about the football games, we were in the Moorhead area and Brainerd and Virginia up north, and we were in the Rochester area as well as in the metro and places like that. And so our schools do a great job of hosting, whether it's their own contest or whether it's a neutral site for section winners who come together in the quarterfinals.
And you mentioned a lot of the sports that are happening right now in this season transition, so some state tournaments happening and all the stuff that everybody knows about. But the State High School League is a little broader than that, and that's something maybe not everybody does know, because you touch all the sports people are familiar with, but you mentioned the adaptive sports, so you have that sort of set of programs and opportunities, as well as fine arts and other things that you guys do for the schools as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Adapted sports, just as a note, the Adapted Association of America just 2 weeks ago granted the Minnesota State High School League a Founders Award because we were the first state ever to have adapted sports that was sanctioned by a state association. And so whether you look at that or the work that we've done in partnering with Clay Target and robotics and bringing those into the high school league as well, providing an experience and an opportunity for those students who really want to take part in that. A lot of new entrants who hadn't been a part of a sport or a fine arts activity, but we also have one-act play, and we've got debate, and we've got speech going on, as well as visual arts and music. So lots of different activities. We really try to find a place for everyone within the Minnesota State High School League because we know the value of having really good opportunities and experiences and connecting those adults who really love working with kids in areas of their passion is really what it's all about, to give them a great experience.
That is great, and congrats on the award.
Hey, thanks.
Erich, you've taught math, coached basketball, football, and track, served as a high school principal. How did those roles prepare you for the job of being the executive director of the Minnesota State High School?
I think when you ask that question, it probably goes back even further, right? It's what did I do growing up, and for all of us, what were our experiences? So clearly, I had a great chance to play some sports as I was going through high school, but I was also a music kid. I was in the band and I was in the choir. I was in student government, even did a little bit of drama, not super well, I would say, but just understanding and recognizing the importance of what those activities are. And then moving into the teaching and coaching role and really knowing and understanding what that is. It was always my goal as a teacher to never forget what it was like as a student and to try to make sure my classroom was a place that was an effective setting for our students. And then as a coach to never forget what it's like to be a player or a participant. And I think that keeping those things in mind as I step into a role like this, understanding what our administrators go through, understanding what our teachers and our coaches are going through, I think that that's a priority for me as I think about the work that we do to bring schools together around their common passions and so on. And I think that recognizing the unique aspects that are part of each one of those roles. And I did a little bit of officiating, never at a varsity level, good for everybody that I didn't, but at lower levels and so on. So I understand that side of things as well. And I think that understanding, that experiential piece is pretty important to recognizing the challenges that exist there. And so I just see it as an incredible honor to be able to be in this role now, to work with so many people. And that's truly what I do, is I get to work with them because we have leaders in every one of our activities. We have leaders in the officiating side of things, great relationships with our coaches association, and the work that they all do is incredible in making this all work.
You mentioned a lot of the people involved, officials, students, of course, parents, teachers. You're working with that whole mix of everybody. And not to talk politics, won't be specific, but our political environment, we've just been through an election. And I think we've all seen over the last number of years that at times there's been a little bit more of a vitriolic relationship out there and some mean-spiritedness and some things like that all of us are concerned about. Have you seen that manifested over the last few years at all in high school athletics, and do you see any good kind of rays of hope to overcome those kinds of things within the sports world and the full world of activities that you deal with?
I think it's not any different than when I was a high school principal. Our schools are, mini environments of our entire society. So you're going to see behaviors that we probably would rather not see connected to our schools, connected to our events and things like that. But what I would say is what goes really well is when we get students working with students. I always felt like I could have a lot more impact working with kids than I could with adults. And they want things a certain way. They want them in a positive vein. They want to be able to compete and participate at a high level. But they tell us really plainly that we don't really want that noise within our contests, right? We don't want that to be part of our program. We want to be able to be a part of it and compete in a great way. And I think that, the standards, the beliefs of the Minnesota State High School League completely echo that, right? Character, integrity, fairness, all of those things, treating one another with respect. We talk about safe, respectful, and inclusive environments for everybody. Everyone should have a space that they can be in, feel good about that, and feel safe. I do think society-wise, we have work to do. Right? I think we can be better. I think we can be more effective if we can find middle ground and we can work on that. But ultimately, this is one of those things everyone seems to agree on. We all want to cheer for our team. We all want to play. We all want to have games. And if we do that, we've got to do that in a good way.
Right.
The pressure from parents on high school coaches to play their kids or to win has really pushed a lot of coaches out of the business. How is the Minnesota State High School League combating that? How are you dealing with the issue of coaches really feeling overwhelmed by the pressure that's been placed on their shoulders?
I think the experience of our students is still primary for us. I think our families really want to see their student be respected and given an opportunity, and I think our coaches want the same thing. At times, sometimes those visions are a little bit different between those two. From the high school league standpoint, one, we want to make sure that our coaches have the tools. And so when we do head coaches training and those kinds of things, it's to understand, how to work with students. And a lot of them are educators in other ways as well. So they have some of those skills and those abilities. And then working with the administration. And we really rely on them at the local level to assist and support our coaches as they go through that. And our ADs face some of the same, right? They're oftentimes the place where the hard conversations happen and the expectations are there. And to help people understand what the expectations as well as what the experience of high school participation is all about. It's okay to not necessarily be a starter when you're a 10th grader, right? That you're going to have to play behind somebody for a little while and you're going to have to, hone your skills and practice and scrimmages and those kinds of things. But without question, the expectations are very high, right? Folks have invested a lot, whether it be time, resource, or other, and they feel like that should result in something, and at the same time, so does every other family and every other student. And there's only so many spots in some cases. So I think there's ongoing work to be done in that space to support our coaches in the work that they do, make sure that they're well prepared, but also have our families understand what that is. And I've seen our ADs do it. I've been to start of the year meetings with with all of the new participants, and the families come in and have those conversations. And they're really plain and clear with them that when you get to a varsity level, this isn't going to be everybody gets X amount of minutes and those kinds of things. So I think that helps as well.
So part of that same equation, the pressures that the students, the parents, the coaches are kind of dealing with, and the league has also affects the officiating, the officials in sports, and maybe here and there's people that take it a little too seriously and maybe think every call in an athletic contest is the end of the world. And so being an official is a tough job, right? And so there's been a lot of talk about shortage or how difficult it is to find umpires, officials in high school sports, given some of those pressures. What's the MSH? I can't even say it right. I was going to try to say it quickly.
MSHSL.
So I keep saying, the high school league, because I can't get that one out right. But what are you doing to recruit and retain officials and referees and keep that mix?
Yeah, if you've been to a state tournament, you see it on the boards all the time, right? We're always asking folks to really dig in and join us and be a part of it. We have recruiting forums that happen all over the place. Some of our partners in professional teams here in the Metro assist with that. They'll host sites for us to be able to do that. And then training them in. I think because we did experience a pretty significant shortage here a few years back, that we put our officials sometimes in a position they're not ready for, right? So kind of our mentality has been, they get started and they do some middle school and they work their way up to the junior varsity level, and then eventually they get a few years under their belt and they're a lot more prepared and they step into a varsity. I think because of shortage, more recently, we've had officials that have had to step all the way to the varsity level rather quickly. And that's where we look for mentorship and so on. Our best way to recruit is having our officials talking to others who they know can be really good officials. The good news is that we are coming back. Our officials numbers are better and are now nearing the 2019 prior to the pandemic when we saw a fair number that step away. And so I think we just continue to work with the officials who we have, but also always reaching out. We say jokingly that, clearly we have a lot of officials because we hear them in the stands all the time. So we just got to get them to put a whistle on and come down and help us out, right? They see those things, and it doesn't make it necessarily easy. Most everything is on video, so it feels like we should always be able to replay everything and those kinds of things. But when you actually look at it and you truly know what the rules are, you find out more times than not they have it right and they've made that correct call. And I think that's support. And our officials will generally say, let's have replay when we can have it, when it works, right? Because in the end, they want it called correctly, whatever that happens to be.
Just as a quick follow-up, are there some things being put in place for replays and some other use like that? Like we're obviously seeing in professional sports, it's becoming pervasive. But
right, yeah. So down to the micro.
It's not always great that you have it either.
Right.
It's a trade-off. But
where we have what I would call professional level ability to do so. So when we're at the XL Energy Center for state championships, or when we're at US Bank or some of those kinds of things, we have very clear guidelines as to what can be replayed. But we have put those in place. Spot of the ball, or a place where somebody crossed a line or didn't cross a line, went out of bounds or didn't go out of bounds, who touched the ball last in basketball. Some of those things that you can visually see. We do have some replay at the state level, at the highest level. But beyond that, coaches' calls still stand, and we don't typically review.
100 years ago, when I was a kid, transferring schools only happened when your family moved. Otherwise, you went to one school. Moving for an athletic program was unheard of. That's changed. Now, student athletes can jump schools if they think that a program is a better fit for them. How does the high school league view that? Is that a positive thing? So kids are landing in a good place for them? Or is it a negative because some programs have a difficult time getting established if their players are moving on a regular basis?
Well, the good news is you're not at the college level, right? We don't have that kind of transition that's going on. And honestly, the number of transfers that we have on a yearly basis has been quite consistent. We have about 2,000 students annually that will change schools. That's not to say that families don't still make choices around academic programs, what school they want to be in for whatever those reasons may be, and some may be around the activity side of things as well. And so I would say that what we need to talk about is the fact that we're one of the very few places that is educationally based. And educationally based to me means two things. One, that your activities are tied directly to a school, right? And that your connection to that school is priority number one. So where you're enrolled is where you're going to participate. The second thing about educationally based is that the purpose of our activities is around education, not about advancing to the next level. The numbers haven't really changed. 95 to 97% of our students will have their culminating athletic experience in high school. And there's 3 to 5% that are going to move on to something at the next level. So when you think about that, generally we're going to be focused on the student's education. And education is best if you stay in the same place and follow through and not jump from school to school to school. And our bylaws say really plainly, and our bylaws come from our schools, that if you transfer for athletic purposes, that you are not varsity eligible for a year. And many families understand and know that, and they transfer, and they might transfer as a 10th grader or whatever, and know that they're going to be a JV player, those kinds of things. But generally, we know that Minnesota is an open enrollment state, so students and families can make their choices that they choose to. Once they start 9th grade, they've established the school where they participate at. If they make a transfer after that, now you're subject to the transfer rules, which says, you need to wait your turn, and or if you have a specific reason for it that qualifies, then you can become varsity eligible. And I think one of the aspects that I just want to highlight, I think that people miss out on an awful lot, is that when someone moves, there's lots of folks that say, we'd like them to be eligible. But there's also a great number of students who've been waiting for that very same spot and have been in that school and in that program for quite some time. And so where's the fairness aspect to that, and how do we maintain that? So that's where things are at.
So you mentioned, the comparison to college with the transfer portal now and people moving, but kind of related to that and the trickle-down scenario is NIL. And NIL has really, it appears, taken over college athletics in combination with the transfer portal. And it's probably beginning to seep into high school sports as well. Potentially very beneficial to students that might be involved. But what are Minnesota high school athletes allowed to do or not do? Or what are kind of some of the rules or just your thoughts about what are you seeing in terms of NIL starting to make its appearance?
I think there's a perception that it's vast and that there's a lot going on, and I would say that doesn't appear to be the case at the high school level. We do have a policy regarding name, image, and likeness and what students are able to do to be able to earn dollars for that. So go back again to the basics that high school league is for amateur students, right? Amateur participants, so they cannot be paid for their performance in a particular sport or activity, right? So in that basis, we also know that students walking the halls of our schools can be very famous for lots of different reasons, and they have the ability to be influencers and to be able to advertise those kinds of things. So we need to maintain the rights of the students, whether they're participating in activities or athletics, and also at the same time have to maintain that amateur status. So the rules are very basic. A student can engage in an NIL activity if they choose to, but they cannot use their school, they can't use their school colors, they can't use their uniform, and they can't use their performance in a particular activity to say, here's the case. So I can say, my name is Joe, and I think you should get your oil changed down the street here, and they can be paid for that, but they can't say where they go to school, what activities they're in, or what awards they've won, or those kinds of things. So just like any other student in school, they have those same opportunities.
Makes sense.
After a very long effort, boys volleyball was recently added as a sanctioned sport by the State High School League. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of adding a sport and maybe why there was some initial pushback to boys volleyball being sanctioned and what the process looks like to add a sport?
Yeah, it's a great question and maybe one of the more misunderstood things. So it feels like it was a long process, but it was about 5 years from inception to coming into the Minnesota State High School League. And it goes back to the basis that we're a group of member schools, and member schools make the decisions through representation or other methods, right? And so as boys volleyball was being created, it was created at the high school level with the purpose and the goal to be part of the Minnesota State High School League. And so that comes to the point of having our schools embrace that and say that, yes, in fact, we want this to be part of the high school league. Keep in mind that there's lots of activities within the high schools that are not part of the high school league. And people don't necessarily remember that, but there are. And there's lots of other club activities that are not part of the high school league as well. And so what I would say is it took a while for boys volleyball to get to a point where our schools were saying, yes, it's pervasive enough and it has reached a level to say, we would support having this happen. And so to the process, which has been further refined, it takes a certain number of schools to offer it and to also want to propose that it be coming forward. So it comes from our schools just like all of our rules do. And so they come and they say, we would like to propose and support the addition of this. And so there were a couple of years where it was kind of hanging in the balance. Good news is we're there now, and we're ready for our first season of boys volleyball this coming spring. We're looking forward to our first state tournament, and we're finalizing venues for that and so on. And we're anticipating more than 90 teams across the state that are going to be playing boys volleyball at the varsity level this year. So it should be a great season.
Nice. Related, what kind of sports do you see, from your perspective, the perspective of the league, that are really thriving, and are there any others that may be doing not so well and might need a little more increased participation or things that you might see? And is there anything else on the horizon that's not yet at that level but might be coming down the road?
Yeah, a lot in that question, right? I think that the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic reaffirmed the desire and the appetite for the activities that we have, without question. And largely our sports and activities are really well participated in. We are seeing in a couple of our sports, we're starting to see things level and or maybe drop a little bit. I think there are some sports there that we need to be paying attention to and see what our schools need to be able to make those things happen. A couple of our girls' sports are down a little bit, but generally we're pretty static. And so that's great to see. The fastest growth is always in the newest sports and activities. They're new and people are excited about those, and so we see that. And like I said, with boys volleyball, we anticipate that's going to continue to grow as well. But numbers in some of our traditional ones, in terms of numbers of schools and participants, track has been strong. You look at things, football and basketball and baseball and softball and those kinds of things continue to be strong in that way. And as you look out, one of the ones that's been talking to us for quite some time, but there's multiple providers, but esports. And how does that fit into the Minnesota State High School? And should it remain with an activity-based kind of thing with that? So those are the things that are out there. Girls flag football has definitely been something that we've seen on ads and so on from the NFL and so on. And so we continue in conversations with our schools around that topic as well. Minnesota
is a cold weather state, obviously, which can make scheduling games or getting you in full season is really difficult, and particularly as it relates to sports like baseball, golf, boys golf. How do you adjust for that? I know there's been some conversation about moving, or at least some people who suggest that we move boys golf to the fall as opposed to the spring because of the weather in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that request, right? Because of the great involvement in summer baseball and summer softball and the length that those go, it feels like they're going to stay in the spring, right? Golf is one of those that could be a spring sport or a fall sport. Some of our neighbors have a mix. One goes spring, one goes fall, or vice versa, or both are in the fall. I would say conversations continue in that particular space amongst the coaches, amongst the host sites, our venues. There's a great appetite in Minnesota for the sport of golf, and so when spring starts, everybody wants access to that, and the weather can be really challenging. I would say there's not a definitive answer as to whether or not it would move, but that would be, again, something that would be proposed through our schools to say, here's something that we would want to do, and we would work with our venues to say, is this something that's reasonable? And I think we continue to study that and take a look at that as we go forward.
You mentioned the cold weather, so I know you probably don't like to carve out one sport versus the others, but state of hockey, Minnesota hockey tournament is revered, obviously, in the state. How do you see that yourself, and how is that seen by your counterparts around the country? I mean, you must have discussions with people, and what's kind of the view of the hockey tournament?
The state hockey tournament is a really special experience. And it's viewed that way not only here in Minnesota, but it's viewed that way nationally. And I've had a number of conversations with executives across the nation, and their question is always, how do you build something like that? And I said, it's not something you build, right? It has to come from the ground up. It has to be established, and without question, it captivates our state when that takes place. And the experience that happens not only for the students and the players, but for their communities and for everyone connected to that sport is incredibly special, no question about it. So it's an exciting time, exciting both boys and girls, and at the same time we have lots of tournaments like that are really, really strong. But that one for sure is unique in the sport of hockey when it comes to the national scene. No one else has one like we do.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. It is unfortunate because I've got a lot of questions I'd love to continue to ask you, but unfortunately we've come to the end of the show. Dave, always great to see you. Thanks for getting up off the mat. I know you saw a doctor this morning.
All good.
Your commitment to this show is such that here you are this afternoon.
That is right. I'm a gamer. So
gamer,
yeah.
Absolutely you are. Like Kirk Gibson.
Yeah.
Coming out of the locker room in the 1988 World Series.
Now, my culminating athletic experience was actually more like junior high school and high school, but yeah, this is how I can contribute.
You had an athletic career. I didn't know.
Well, 6th grade.
Erich, thanks so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. Thank all of you for watching Behind the Game, and we'll see you again next month.